Towards the beginning of the book of Samuel, Shmuel, before there were any kings in Israel, the Holy Ark is captured by the Philistines and brought to one of their 5 main cities, Ashdod. The next day, quote, "The hand of the Lord was heavy upon the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and struck them with ophalim, malignant growths, both in Ashdod and in its territory." The Hebrew word ophalim, which I translate loosely as malignant growths, has also been translated as hemorrhoids, boils, tumors, or other sorts of maladies. In order to quell the outbreak of this disease, the Philistines send the ark to another one of their cities, Gath. But after it had been moved, the Lord struck that city as well, causing a great deal of panic. He struck all the people of that city with ophalim, malignant growths. The Philistines attempt to transfer the ark to a third Philistine city named Ekron, but the inhabitants of Ekron have seen enough. Quote, "Get the ark of the God of Israel out of here. Let it go back to its own place so that it won't kill us and our people." The Philistines cut their losses and decide to send the ark away on a cart. But there's a twist. The cart has 2 cows to pull it, but no driver to direct it. In theory, the cart could go in any direction whatsoever. Miraculously, the cart heads straight to the Israelites in Beit Shemesh. It is now crystal clear that the Lord, the God of Israel, is the one who brought the epidemic, and that he wants the ark to remain with the people of Israel. This episode is arguably the most explicit case of an epidemic in the entire Hebrew Bible. We are told about a specific disease, the ophalim, and its spread from one city to another. We also know why the plague was brought, as a punishment for stealing the ark from Israel. But even with all this information, we do not know how many Philistines died, meaning we do not know the scale of the outbreak. This omission is typical for biblical plagues. We do not know how many people died in the flood of Noah. We do not know how many people died in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah, and we do not know how many Egyptians died in the 10 plagues. We are only told how many people died in 3 biblical epidemics. We'll take a look at why God sent these plagues, how many people died, and how the epidemics came to an end. In our first passage, which comes from the book of Numbers and concerns the wandering generation of Moses, a rebellion erupts over who can be priest. So far, only Aaron, and his descendants could be priests, which means they could offer sacrifices, burn incense, and much more. A man named Korah leads 250 people in protest. Korah confronts the brothers Aaron and Moses, saying, "The entire community is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why do you exalt yourselves above the congregation of the Lord? In other words, you are no better than us. Let us be priests too." God doesn't like this and opens the ground and swallows up Korah and his men. The message is very, very clear. Leave Aaron alone. Only he and his children can be priests. While this episode should be over, it isn't. The very next day, the Israelites blame Moses and Aaron for killing Korah and his followers, who are supposedly men of God. At this point, God has had enough, and he begins killing thousands of Israelites by spreading a plague. Moses tells Aaron to burn some incense, and the plan works immediately. Quote, "Aaron stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. Now 14,700 people died in the plague, in addition to those who died in the event with Korah." Aaron walls off the healthy from the sick, the living from the dead, and he does so in a way that solidifies his priestliness even more. He uses the priestly incense, the very incense that the rebel Korah wanted to use himself. One of the messages from this story is that the people of Israel can only live if Aaron and his sons are the ones performing the priestly rites. The book of Numbers contains a second, more deadly epidemic. According to Numbers 25, the men of Israel promiscuously followed the women of Moab, and Midian, and worshipped a deity known as Baal Peor. Just as Moses gets ready to execute the guilty men for their sins, an Israelite man struts through the camp with a Midianite woman, and the couple even pass by Moses and the tabernacle itself. The plague breaks out, and thousands of people start dying. When Pinchas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he got up from among the assembly, took a javelin in his hand, and went after the Israelite man into the tent, and thrust through the Israelite man and into the woman's abdomen, meaning the man and the woman were on the same pole. So the plague was stopped from the Israelites. Those that died in the plague were 24,000. Aaron's grandson Pinchas is rewarded for his zeal with a Brit Shalom, a covenant of peace, and a Brit Kahunat Olam, a covenant of eternal priesthood. Just as Aaron's priestly line is protected by God, so too is Pinchas's. As the generations would unfold, Pinchas's descendants would include many high priests and other important figures such as Ezra the scribe. The third and deadliest epidemic was brought on by a surprising culprit, David, king of Israel. It is not entirely clear what went wrong, but David sins greatly by counting all the soldiers of Israel, which numbered 1.3 million. God sends Dever, usually translated as pestilence or disease, and 70,000 people die, approximately 5% of the male population. In order to stop the spread, the prophet Gad, G-A-D, tells David to buy the threshing floor of a Jebusite, build an altar there, and sacrifice offerings to God. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 pieces of silver. Then David built an altar for the Lord there and offered burnt sacrifices and peace offerings. And the Lord accepted prayers for the land, and the plague was removed from Israel. These are the last verses in the book of Samuel, and they are important ones. According to the book of Chronicles, this threshing floor would eventually become the site of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. In other words, the census led to the plague led to the threshing floor, and the threshing floor led to the temple. While there are many references to sickness and epidemics in the Bible, the 3 plagues we discussed here have the highest known death counts. 14,700 died in the aftermath of Korach's rebellion, 24,000 died for worshipping Baal Peor, and 70,000 died because David took a census. It was Aaron who stopped the first plague with incense, Pinchas who stopped the second plague with a spear, and David who stopped the third plague with an altar. For those wondering about epidemics in the New Testament, while there are many, many sick individuals that are healed, there are no large-scale epidemics described in any detail. Also, for those interested in my interpretation of the Hebrew word mגפה, check the comments below. The idea for this video came about during the coronavirus pandemic of 2020, which is still not under control. As I sit here today, 228,884 people have died so far. My wish for everyone watching this video, and really every person out there, is God's blessing of Exodus 23:25. V'hasiroti machla mikirbecha, and I, God, will remove the sickness from your midst.